This video is part 4 in a series on how to leave an abusive relationship. The previous videos have focused on how to get emotional clarity that leaving is the right option and how to plan for what to do when you actually leave. This video is about the act of leaving, the last few days, the last week, and not going back after you've left. Why do we need this video? Because making a plan and doing the plan are two very different things. We're going to talk about 5 or 6-ish things in the video, and we're going to go a little bit longer than we normally do because I want to put as much detail in here as possible. Let's get into it. So the first big idea for your last few days and when you actually leave is to be ready and be prepared for the abusive person to act completely differently than they did before, or much more extremely than they did before. Keep in mind you're dealing with an abusive and most likely very manipulative person, and if they realize that you're either about to leave or that you already left, they're likely to be at their very most abusive or manipulative or controlling. This could be extreme threats or crazy behaviors or physically acting out. It could also be extreme apologies or acts of kindness or being extremely sweet. They might do some things for the first time ever, either acting out in a way that they've never acted out before, making threats they've never made before, or saying sorry where they've never said sorry before, agreeing to go to therapy if they've never done that before, promise to change if they've never done that before. The point is, you're likely to be dealing with a lot of behaviors here that are either way more extreme or very different than you've seen in the past. And this can make it really hard to stay leaving the relationship or to not go back if you've already left the relationship for a variety of reasons. It's probably somebody you love and care about deeply, and you may have wanted the entire time for them to see the error of their ways or to say sorry and promise to change. And maybe they've never done that before. And then when you left, they suddenly did those things and they're promising to be different, right? And so that can just be really a difficult thing to say no to and not to go back to if it's someone you really love and care about. On the other end of the spectrum, on the scary side or the threats or physical acting outside, they may do things that you hadn't anticipated that are extremely dangerous or make you want to change your mind about your decision. I think I've said in some of the other videos that there's a statistic out there on the internet that the average person leaving an abusive relationship goes back to that relationship like 6 or 7 times. I don't know if that's a true statistic, but I know it is very common from all the people that I've talked to. And it's a serious risk after you leave that you would be brought in by these tactics by the abusive person and end up going back. You really need to prepare in advance for this in order to be ready for it. Here's a few things that are definitely helpful. First of all, keep in mind that all of the lovey-dovey stuff and the promises to be different and them all of a sudden acting really nice when they were acting abusively before, all of that is BS. That's just them not liking the fact that you're leaving. And so they're doing anything they can to get you back into that relationship. Real change, like somebody actually totally changing the way that they treat people that they love or totally changing the way that they act in relationships, doesn't just happen like that. And you've probably also heard a lot of promises for them before about different things that they would do or how they would treat you that they've continuously broken over time in an abusive relationship, because that's very common. So keep in mind that this is actually probably a pattern with this person, that when something happens that they don't like you leaving, they take extreme steps to try to stop that. But those steps are only temporary because once you're back, they feel like they can start acting the way that they were before. So keep those in mind. Another thing that's really helpful is just think in advance about all the things they're likely to do or say, either on the nice side or on the scary side, and plan in advance for whether you would want to go back if they did those things. Think about all the nice or sweet things they could do. Think about all the threatening things that they could do. Just imagine them in advance, and for each one, think about, okay, if they did this, would I want to go back? Should I actually go back if they did this? Would it really mean that I should go back if they did this? And that's going to go nicely with the idea of doing dress rehearsals that we talk about later in the video. Finally, it can really help to write notes to yourself in advance that you can read later, basically capturing why you're leaving and why you know that's the right decision, and some of the other things that we've talked about, so that when you might feel like going back to that person or changing your mind, you can go and read those notes from yourself like 2 days beforehand and and you can help convince yourself not to go back. And all of this preparation will really help you with not landing back in that situation. And that brings us to the second key idea in the video, which is that permanent steps are your friend because they're irreversible and they help you not have to use so much of your willpower. I talked about this in the last episode, so I won't go into all of it here, but examples of permanent steps are telling everybody, your friends and family, about what's been going on. You can't untell them. Filing for a restraining order, making a police report, blocking the person on your phone so that they can't contact you. All of these are things you can't take back that make it easier for you to move on and harder for you to go back to that situation. And the third key idea in the video is to be ready for the abusive person to try to guilt you into going back to the relationship. In terms of guilt, there's many layers, and it depends on the person and the other person on the other end. They might try to convince you that you should feel guilty because you're leaving them in a bad situation, whether that's financial, medical, heartbreak, mental health, anything, that you're somehow leaving them and abandoning them, and that is something that you should feel guilty about. Another possible option for guilt would be to say that you're ending a marriage or ending a family, and that's all on you. And with all of these, I think the big things to keep in mind are, first of all, be ready for it because it's almost definitely going to happen. Second is that if you're leaving this situation, usually the person on the receiving end of the abuse did not create that whole situation. They're not doing all these abusive things that are causing the person to have to leave, right? Very often the person who's leaving is in a situation where they have almost no other option except to leave that situation. So the guilt really shouldn't be on you in that situation. Most of the fault or the actual, responsibility for why you have to leave is not because you just want to leave. It's because you have to because of what's going on. And that brings us to the fourth key idea in the video, which to me is one of the most helpful and most important, which is it might take you several dress rehearsals to feel the clarity that you need to actually go through with leaving. Here's what I mean by a dress rehearsal. When it was time for me to actually leave, I actually was ready in theory with my plan and with the right ideas and everything, maybe like a month before I actually left. But it was such a big decision to me, and it was someone that I deeply cared about, and I really wanted to feel like I was sure that that was the right thing to do and the right time to do it. So I basically got everything ready, and then I didn't leave that first week because I just didn't feel 100% sure that I was ready to do that. And after that, over the whole next week, I just kind of looked myself in the mirror and I looked at my notes and I thought about my reasons for it. And I thought, is this really the right decision? Am I sure about all of this? What if this? What if that? What if I look back on this in 2 years and I regret this? And I felt like I was really finally sure, and then I got to the second week and I decided I was going to leave. And then I didn't have the opportunity to do that day because there were some specific circumstances that needed to happen in terms of timing and schedules and things like that for me to be able to leave safely and have all of my loved ones and people and things that I care about go with me. So I waited another week because I only got that opportunity about once a week. And in that third week, again, I wasn't sure. And then finally, after about a month-ish of all of that, I finally actually did leave. And so you can see there's this pattern of having these dress rehearsals almost, where you're almost ready to go. You're like, okay, today's the day. Imagine today was the day. Would this have been the right decision? I sincerely hope that story was helpful in terms of just going through that last couple days or that last couple weeks to know that if you don't feel 100% sure, that's pretty normal, and that I did not either. I don't even remember if I got all the weeks in that story right or the exact sequence, but it was something along the lines of what I was explaining, and it was a very difficult thing to go through. And that brings us to the fifth key idea in the video, which is safety first and backup plans. Now, we had the whole third video, the one right before this one in the series, about planning, so I really encourage you to go back and watch that one if you are still making your plan, because there's a lot more tips in that one, but I'm going to reiterate a couple of the most important here. Number one, don't tell the person in advance that you're leaving. You might feel like you need to. You might feel like you need to say, I'm leaving, goodbye, or something like that. You don't need to do that. This person has created a situation where it is not safe and not healthy, and it is risky for you to do that. You should not tell them in advance that you're going to leave. Another thing, your plan may involve law enforcement or courts, or it may not, but it should not require them to act in a certain way for you to be safe. Because in a lot of places, states, countries in the world, you can't always predict exactly what law enforcement or courts will do, and you can't have your plan leave you unsafe if they don't do what you're expecting them to do. So don't assume that anybody else is going to act in exactly the way that you predict. Have a backup plan. And if you need more context on that, go back to the previous video. Finally, make sure that your plan does not involve physical confrontation with the abusive person. That's inherently unpredictable. People's bodies are very breakable. You could get a permanent injury. That's never a good idea, except as a desperate last resort that ideally is not part of your plan at all. Seriously, safety first, and even no matter how much planning you do and how much thinking ahead you do, it is probably a very dangerous thing to leave an abusive person, depending on what type of abuse that person has exhibited in the past and all these other factors. So just take it very seriously, and also remember what I mentioned at the start of the video, that sometimes the abusive partner will act in a very extreme way that you haven't seen before if they feel like they're somehow losing the relationship. Safety first and be prepared. And that brings us to the sixth key idea in the video, which is that leaving an abusive partner really can change your entire life in a very, very positive way. And I know all of this is probably focused, and a lot of your life may be focused on all of the negative ways that this relationship is affecting your life, but it helps to have motivation to keep in mind that there's this huge positive ripple effect that comes from leaving this situation that's probably going to affect all of the other parts of your life in a positive way. It's going to affect your health. It's going to affect your social life. It probably will ripple effect to your career. It'll probably affect your self-esteem and how you act every day and what parts of your personality you express. And it really is a life-changing thing to go from being with a person like that to not being with a person like that. And there really is a lot of green grass on the other side of the river or fence or whatever that analogy is. So just keep that in mind, that there's really good things that come out of leaving an abusive relationship, and there's a really good reason to go through with all of the other things we've talked about. That's it for the main part of this video. If you're watching this and you're planning to leave a real abusive relationship, good luck with your safety. Good luck with feeling clear about things. Keep in mind that it won't necessarily all come together right away. Keep in mind you might have lots of different emotions and maybe feel guilty or maybe not be sure what to do. Keep in mind it's not a fun process, but you can do it and it is worth it, and you will make it to the other side. Now, regarding this series, I did mention at the start that there would be 4 main episodes: intro, clarity, planning, and then this one about the last few days. And there would be 2 bonus episodes. I am still planning to make those. Right now, tentatively, the plan is number 1, to talk about my experience after leaving and some of the effects that that had on my life, so that people can hear about that and think of some things that they might expect if their situation is similar to mine. And another one that's more just about reasons to leave relationships in general that aren't necessarily all about an abusive person, because I think those can actually be quite helpful in really getting yourself over the line of the decision. So I will still be making those 2 episodes, and once they're ready, they will be posted in the description below. Good luck with your situation. Thanks so much for watching, and take care.